to clarify one aspect that may not be clear to people who haven't experienced this, when you're sitting in the chair, you've got your eye mask on, your IV is all set, you're ready to go. Julie starts the pump and doesn't say I'm starting now. She just starts it. And so my experience, and during the 30 minutes or so that the ketamine is flowing, you're still able to talk, but it just, as Dave was saying, it feels like I'm aware that I have a body somewhere, but I'm not connected to it. And I know that I'm in a room with Julie. My body's in a room with Julie, so I can hear her, but she sounds very far away, even though she's sitting, like right here. So it, for me, was definitely an experience of being dissociated from my physical body. But like Dave said, I never had the experience of my consciousness like lifting out of my body or anything like that. It's more like the association kind of slowly dissolves so that my consciousness is just at some point freed from my body. In my experiences, the colors blue and purple, these like a violet and a blue, a light blue, very, very frequent, and appeared in different forms throughout my experiences. One of the things that is different between a ketamine experience and a near-death experience is that a big part of near-death experiences is what I call the material aspect, where the person they experience their consciousness apart from their physical body, but perceiving the material world. And that never happened for me. And Julie says it doesn't happen. Did it ever happen for you, Dave, that you were like seeing your body right there in the room? Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So that's not there. It's completely what I call the transmaterial aspect, where I'm in environments and sometimes in the presence of interacting with entities that are not of the material world. So it's all a transmaterial kind of experience, but all the while, saying to Julie what I'm experiencing, and she would, as Dave said, regularly say, what's happening now? What are you experiencing now? And I would report it. Well, so the way that she does this is she writes down everything that the patient says. And then when she turns off the pump after 30 minutes or so, if the person's continuing to have experiences, she'll keep writing, but at some point the experiences sort of stop, but you're not in any way completely back yet. And it's a very gradual process. And at that point, she starts to go back to what I said throughout the session. So she'll start at the beginning and say, well, the first thing you mentioned was this. And then it's an opportunity for me to say more, because when I'm in the actual experience, it just isn't appropriate to ask to expand or explain in more detail or whatever. It's just like letting it happen, and whatever is being said is said, and you just don't stop that process. But afterwards, she'd say back to me what I said, and then give me the opportunity to expand and say, well, yeah, and this was happening and that was happening, which, I didn't have the wherewithal to say at the time that it was happening. So it's an opportunity to process each thing in each little aspect in more depth. And some of my most emotional moments came during that processing, not during the experiencing as much. And an example is in my first session, the biggest thing that happened was that at one point I was, as I said, just perched outside of blackness. And I was just perched there, very aware that there was this blackness there. It wasn't scary or anything like that. It was just a like, here I am perched outside of blackness. And then at one point I started going into the blackness. And when I did, I said to Julie, actually several times, I'm losing my sense of myself. And eventually I said, I'm not me anymore. I'm one with the blackness that's nothing / everything. And I had no sense of myself as Jan. Like that just was, if I'd even thought of it, it would have just been a very foreign idea. I was completely freed of this identity. And so so I stayed in that place for quite some time, and it was absolutely wonderful. It wasn't like ecstatic. It was just profound, pervasive, absolute peace. And as I said, being one with everything / nothing. Now, when we were processing it, and she said that back to me. She said, then you said, I'm one with the blackness that's everything / nothing. And she said, is there anything else you want to say about that? And I said, wait, let me stay with that. And as I was dwelling on what that experience was like, I just started weeping profusely for the beauty of how free I felt in that. It's like afterwards, I was talking with my husband about it and saying, I understand now. I mean, I've read so many times that near-death experiencers say, you have this experience, you don't fear death anymore because you know what it's like. Well, this was like, I think that deep down, and I never would have been able to identify this before the ketamine session, but deep down, I feared death. And what was fearful was the loss of my identity, my sense of myself. Like if I'm not myself, then what? And what I had was an experience of not being myself. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So I have like no fear of death now. Again, like near-death experiencers, I'm not anxious to go through like a painful dying process, but death itself, I think was a taste of being disconnected from this identity. And it was so freeing. It was just the freedom of it was just absolutely magnificent. So that was that big one. And since then I've realized, because the process of understanding what happened is an unfolding one, and new insights emerge, as time goes on, and run into people saying things or just your own process. And one of the things that I realized is whenever I've meditated, which isn't that much, I'm ashamed to say that I'm not at all a disciplined meditator, but when I have, what I've tried to do is get to a place that is prior to the manifestation of phenomena, like to go to source. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's it. I was there. I was at source. The darkness that's nothing / everything means that nothing has manifested, but everything is, it's the pregnant void. Everything is possible in that darkness. And so it was, I just had this experience of being with source, or being one with source. It was wonderful. So I will say though, before I got to that, one of the first things I realized, and I said, was, there is nothing like this. In the first few minutes of ketamine, I just kept saying to Julie, there's nothing like this. This is like nothing I've ever experienced before. And that loss of control that Dave talked about, I too, of course, struggle with, and I think, and Julie says it's real common, most people don't enjoy being out of control. But there was a moment very early on when, it was taking off and doing its own thing. And I was like, what is happening? And I thought to myself, I want this to stop. But interestingly, it's like I lost my my sense of agency. It's like it didn't occur to me that I could say to Julie, turn off the pump. What I thought was, well, I've committed to doing this for 30 minutes, so I might as well relax and let it happen. And the other thing was that I have asthma, and one of the things I wondered was whether I would have an allergic reaction or anything like that, would be a breathing problem. And at one point I said to Julie, it feels to me like I'm breathing very shallowly. And she said, you're breathing normally. And it was like, oh, okay. So then I was good. and after that first session, just to know that I survived it, I was able to go into the second session with much more openness even than I had in the first session. But of course, not, as Dave said, there's no potential for intentionality here. You can want to have something happen, and it's going to do what it's going to do. And I will say, Stanislav Grof said of LSD that it's a non-specific amplifier of whatever is in the person's own psyche. And I think that is exactly what happens with ketamine as well. And that's why, as Dave keeps saying, whatever we tell you we experience, don't expect that that's what you're going to experience, because that was what our psyche produced. And your psyche might produce something, quite different. There might be some similarities about like seeing colors, seeing images, and seeing blackness, seeing light and things like that. But whether that happens, the form it takes and all that is going to be very individual. And also people who have unresolved trauma tends to come up and get processed. And so that's another thing. Like, I didn't know going into it whether I had any trauma that I wasn't aware of, that might come up. And in fact, none did exactly, but I'll tell you about one thing later. But that, again, it's very individual about what happens. So the second session, the main thing that happened during the 30 minutes of ketamine, there was nothing. There was just like blackness, and there was blue and purple that was just really beautiful. And that's all there was. And Julie said she kept trying to up the dose and see if it would, and like nothing was happening. And she said the minute she turned off the pump, now, of course, I don't know when she's turning it on or turning it off, but she said that the minute she turned off the pump is when I started to describe this experience. And I was in a bluish purple space under the base of the Eiffel Tower. And Eiffel Tower was black in my image. And I don't think this was the actual Eiffel Tower. I think it was like an archetypal Eiffel Tower. And as I was there, suddenly and when I say it's my consciousness, my energy. It wasn't me, Jan, like a body or anything like that. It was my energetic consciousness. She started to shoot up through the tower. And when it got up into above the tower, it's not like I was out in the universe with stars or anything, but there was like a blackness or an infinity. And then I rained down, like like this. I rained down and then recoalesced down at the base of under the base of the Eiffel Tower, and then did that again. So there was this circulation of energy like this. It was just absolutely ecstatic. And then it felt to me like there was something very like mystical, or it's hard to explain. But then I was taken over to the pyramid that's in attached to the Louvre, the glass pyramid, and how that's like a mystical symbol. And then I had the only image that I ever had of something that felt like it was actually a picture of material reality. It felt like it was like the very late, like in the 1890s in Paris, or near Paris. And I am a man. I'm in a group of maybe about 10 men. We're standing in a circle. We have on like white robes and a kind of a white hat that's squared off at the top. And it was like there was something it was like a sacred, secret ceremony that we were doing. And but it was very reverent and sacred, and very like honoring of spirit and that sort of thing. And it felt to me like I was part of a secret society, a secret, like mystical society. So and then I think and then it I was just coming back, and that was the end of the experience. Well, afterwards, first I told Julie when I was under the Eiffel Tower, I said, oh, my husband and I are going to be there in a few weeks on vacation, and at the Eiffel Tower. Well, as a result of this experience, like one of the things that happened was, as I was anticipating this trip to France, I'd never been to France before. It felt like I was going to a foreign place to learn about something that was very other than me. After this experience, I felt like I was going to be coming home. I felt so connected to the Eiffel Tower and France and the history of France and all that. It felt absolutely different. And I've already had that trip now. We got home about 2.5 weeks ago, and it was absolutely a totally different experience than it would have been if I hadn't had this experience. It was really wonderful. And one of the things it prompted me to do was go to the Freemasons Museum in Paris and look at the photos and see if I could see something that looked like, and I did find something that looked kind of like what I experienced. And it's on my phone. It didn't occur to me to put it up so you could see it. But it's a photo of about maybe 16 men, I'm going to say, in a circle. And they have on these white aprons that is apparently very characteristic of the Freemasons. And so it felt like I had been a Freemason. So when Julie and I were processing, it seemed like the theme of that session was about owning my mystical nature, my mystical identity, and not sort of like denying it out of fear of being ridiculed or burned at the stake or something like that. So it's like I had this kind of different sense of myself after that experience. And then the third one was pretty brief to talk about, because it was just all these beautiful blue and purple. And I just kept saying to Julie, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. And then I was practicing my French. So I said, I'm switching to French. Belle, it's beautiful. And then, but the thing that was unique in this one was that when she turned off the pump and it was time to come back, I had the hardest time getting back to a sense of into my body. I felt like my energy was so big. And what I realized, I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I was experiencing my etheric body, the energetic body that's extended beyond the physical body. And I said to Julie, like my feet, are up on the reclining chair, and I would touch my toes together, and I would be so surprised that they were so close to each other, because it felt like there was just this space between them. And so Julie, she's so good. She said, well, can you feel this? And she touched my arm, and I said, yeah, you're touching my left arm. And she said, now can you feel this? And now I have a mask on. I can't see what she's doing. And I didn't know what she was doing, and she didn't tell me what she was doing. But what happened in my left ear, sort of, because this wasn't a sound, it was like an energetic, and after I was, reoriented and finally able to take my mask off, I said, what were you doing? And she said, I was going like this on your arm.
Above it.
Yeah, above it.
Wow.
But just in my energetic field, not touching my arm at all. And so that was really interesting, just to have that sense of, truly a sense of my energetic body being much bigger than my physical body. So, so that was that one. And so now for me, after that experience, after those 3 experiences, I've continued to feel, and it's been probably, 2.5 months or so, like I don't need to do it again. I'm glad I did it. I wanted to do it each of the times I did it. And for me, it feels complete, at least for now. That might change in the future, but for now I'm good. And the meanings and the subtle inferences from it and stuff keep happening as I move along, and get like that realization that the blackness was that source that I'd always tried to reach in meditation, and I was there. So so it's been really great. Yeah. So Dave, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll just tag on to that a little bit, because I think a couple things. First, integration time is important. So to reflect on the insights and learnings and that you had in the experience. And that's why people doing it for untreatable depression or things, trying to deal with their lives. And it does feel like the tools even that I brought back, I feel like I'm in a different space and I'm handling stress better, work stress, family stuff better. And that was noticeable. And it's hard to say my life is completely changed in every way, and you're not a different person, same life, same everything. But that sense of, you don't, you appreciate every moment of this life. So there's a sense of, hey, I'm here to experience all of this. I'm bigger than my body, and I'm not my arm, I'm not my brain, I'm not my heart. I think thoughts, my heart beats, does a lot of this on its own. And there's a sense of appreciation and adaptability that I think the experience can help with. And like I said, I think, 2 or 3 minimum, up to 5 to 7 maybe max. And it might be enough for most people to have that sense. But the integration time afterwards, a week between each session, also was helpful. So that sense of connection to source that you're talking about, right? And meditation, right? People who meditate and relax, and getting behind your thoughts to just that sense of I-ness or me-ness, right? That's kind of behind it. You can't touch it, you can't feel it. That's a hard part of people grasping for that sense of oneness and unity, and because it's not something that can be grabbed. But when you're resting and relaxing and you kind of get sense before thoughts appear, that to me is an aspect where you're touching whatever dimension that exists underneath or permeating our physical world. The last couple of points that I wrote down, just insights after, where this is a transcendent, to me, multi-dimensional experience. And Jen touched on that a little bit. Sort of like a dream or a lucid dream. When you're dreaming in bed, you don't feel your body, but you're having this amazingly vivid dream. So there's some similarities there, but it's more like a lucid dream because you're in this experience. So I thought that was a good metaphor. And that transcendent feeling of knowing you're in the room, but you don't really feel your body, but you know you're in the room. You hear sounds every now and then, or Julie touches your arm, and the therapist touches your arm, and so you're kind of your awareness can hold both of those at the same time without a problem. All right, is it real? Is it quantum reality? Is it an illusion? Is it a hallucination? Who knows, right? Even with the archetypal imagery and things, there's a tangible sense of the alive, to me, the alive nature of consciousness as well. I kind of come from a tech scientific background, and there's a feeling of this consciousness being very alive and dynamic, like creating every moment. I had to, reading some books, David Bohm, quantum foam, or there's stuff happening all the time generating our reality. And we don't, science can't quite document it yet, but there's a sense to an aliveness. It's not a dead void, emptiness, blackness. It's very alive. And that is a nice dynamic, which seemed true for me and probably true for you, Jen. And let's see. And then that sense of letting go, right? Complete let go of not controlling the experience makes a big difference in how it works. So I feel like when it comes to it, these are not cheap. These are $500 sessions. It was a very, very big, challenging commitment to want to continue when I was somewhat financially constrained, and but I felt it was worth it. We're hopeful one day a controlled type of therapy can be covered by insurance, so this can be made available to many, many more people, because right now it's not. There's probably regulatory things that will have to occur, but I think there is a lot of promise. It's not a cure-all for everything. It's absolutely not, but in certain instances, I think it can be incredibly helpful. And heck, who wouldn't, want to feel like at least at one time in your life have a sense of oneness, takes away some fear of death, maybe helps bring making reality not so stressful on a living day to day. And there's an immense value in that. So I think that's the last thought, was approaching therapy with respect, if anybody considers it. Still shocked at kind of the way it rolled out for me, and it'd be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But a wild ride.